When Nancy learns that the Drew's housekeeper has been duped by an elegantly dressed woman into buying a stolen fur piece, the young detective starts a search for the clever swindler. To Nancy's astonishment, she discovers the woman is using the name Nancy Drew. The dishonest acts of the impostor points the finger of suspicion at Nancy herself, and it results of her being questioned by the police. Join me and Nancy as we solve the mystery and clear her name. Let's read The Mystery at the Ski Jump.
Hola, mis esperanzados. ¿Cómo estás? Me llamo La Esperanza 243. Hello, my hopefuls. How are you? My name is The Esperanza 243. Welcome to my channel. Today we are doing a book reading. And before I get into that, I just want to mention what's going on with the camcorder right now. I've been trying to do something new this year where I have the camcorder there for karaoke's. That way it'd be easier for me so that I don't have to keep going boink, 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 make it look obvious that I'm looking, and have my book readings in the normal spot that it's always been. I just want to try this for today, see how it looks, and if I don't like it, I'll just put it back. Looking at it right now, though, I mean, I really like it. I don't have to sit in an awkward position just to get myself in the view. I actually really like how it's sitting, and the lighting is so much better that way too. Normally I try not to talk about behind the scenes stuff when it comes to this, but I mean, I gotta give some explanation as to why the change. Anyways, guys, I'm actually really excited because today we're doing something different with the Nancy Drew book, The Mystery at the Ski Jump. That is because I am going to be reading 2 chapters per video now. This will not only take down the amount of videos for the playlist down quite a bit, it will also help me read more instead of talk more. Which is why last week's video was just 1 chapter. Not last week. The week before last week was just 1 chapter. This week and from now on is going to be 2 chapters. Because I really want to get to the next book in the Mermaid Chronicles. Or, wait, no, I had a different name for the series. Adventures of a Mermaid. That's what it was called. Adventures of a Mermaid. I don't like that title, though. Mermaid Chronicles sounds better. I think that might be taken, though. Anyways, guys, let's go ahead and get into the recap of what happened in the previous book reading of Mystery at the Ski Jump. Now, what happened was that Nancy was trapped in a closet of a mink fur store, and the wife and husband, they call each other Mama and Papa for some weird reason. I mean, I understand why, I just think it's weird. They were just really gullible. They really believed that Nancy Drew was the thief and not Mrs. Channing. They take everyone's word. I mean, which makes sense, because, like, even back then, like, even in the 30s, or, wait, when was this published? 1952. Even back then, like, people took each other's words seriously. It's just how it was. And now, like, not very many people do. Which is why everyone has so many trust issues. Anyways, Bess and George came in the shop looking for Nancy. They were like, "Oh, she's a thief. We should trap them too. We should lock them in a closet." And like, Nancy's like, "Wait, no, stop." Nancy starts shouting and pounding on the door, calling for help. Bess and George freed her, and they explained that Nancy was a detective, and immediately the husband and wife are like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Please, what can I do for you?" And Nancy, as much as their change of personality, like, amused her, like, there was no time for recrimination, however you pronounce that word. And, like, this is where I wish it was like a video game or a movie or a TV series if possible, because, like, you really don't know how they're saying it, especially when the author is writing the book. So Nancy's kind of, like, abrupt, saying, "Never mind, Bess and George, let's go." Like, to me that's rude, but it all depends on how you say it, which is why it's hard to tell the feelings of someone when it comes to written words. But, I mean, even after that, like, Nancy and her friends, like, they searched. They didn't get any leads. So, George speaks up saying that she had an invite to somewhere. Bess was saying that she was invited to the same thing, too. Or no, it was a different thing. And Nancy was like, well, I wish I could go, but I could be sent to Montreal at any minute now. And they decided to stop at a service station. I think Nancy needed gas for her car, even though Bess was driving. Because I don't think Nancy has her license yet. And the guy at the service station, he was really helpful. Bess kind of blabbed of what was going on with Mrs. Channing. But still, it helped them get a lead because the guy at the service station, he was really nice and actually explained that there was a woman that fit that description. And he explained that her car had Vermont license plates, which shocked them all. So Nancy ends up using her phone at home to call and find out what's going on with this Vermont license plates, and finds out that the owner of the car is a Mitzi Channing. Oh boy. So it's not R.I. Channing. R.I. must be the husband's name instead of her name. Unless it's some sort of stage name, I don't know. But when Nancy gets home, wait, then when did she use the phone? Anyways, when Nancy gets home, she finds out that Hannah got a dividend from the Forest Fur Company, Hannah is like, oh, it's fine, I just got a dividend, a big fat dividend. And Nancy's like, what? And Hannah responds saying someone else got a dividend too. Nancy is suspicious of this, so she calls Mrs. Clifton Packer, a well-to-do, well-known woman, and she says that Nancy must come over right away and look into this dividend because it is very queer of how it was handled. And that's actually how the chapter ended. So now that we're back to the book, let's go ahead and continue reading. We're going to be doing 2 chapters this time, as I keep saying. So let's go ahead and start with Chapter 8, Clue in New York. Nancy's fingers tightened on the telephone receiver. You say the dividend payment looks queer, Mrs. Packer, she prompted. Yes, as you might guess, I have a lot of stock in various companies, the woman replied. They always send their dividends by check, checks signed by their treasurer, and the payment from Forest Fur Company was different? It certainly was, said the widow. It was merely a money order mailed from New York. Ooh. I'm sure no legit business would work that way. Thank you, Mrs. Packer. That's just what I wanted to know, said Nancy gratefully. Well, what did she say? Inquired Hannah Gruen as Nancy put down the telephone. Mrs. Packer agrees with me that something is wrong, said Nancy. Do you still have the letter that came with your dividend? There wasn't any letter, the housekeeper frowned. Just the money order in an envelope. Then may I see the envelope, please? Mrs. Gruen had cashed the money order. Unfortunately, she could not remember how she had disposed of the envelope. It was only after 10 minutes of fuss and flurry that the envelope was finally located in a trash can. Nancy smoothed out the crumpled bit of paper and studied the sender's address in the upper left-hand corner. There was no name, only a smudged address in New York City. Who sent those money orders? She asked herself. It couldn't have been Mrs. Channing. She was in River Heights at the very time this envelope was mailed. Clearly, then, Nancy thought, the woman must have a confederate in New York, a criminal partner to whom she sent a list of her victims, and who must have mailed the dividends. Was it Mr. Channing? Nancy set her chin determinedly. This is the best clue I have, and I won't lose any time in following it, she decided. If Dad doesn't need me yet, I'll take the 8 o'clock plane for New York tomorrow. Jeez, how much money do they have? After supper, Nancy telephoned Mr. Drew at his Montreal hotel and told him what she had done so far on her case. Then she asked if she might have a little more time for a quick trip to New York before she joined him. If you think it's important, go ahead, the lawyer replied. I've found some extra work up here that'll keep me busy a few days. In the meantime, maybe you'll solve the mystery of Mrs. Channing. Next morning, Nancy took her seat on the big passenger plane with a thrill of pleasure. She always enjoyed trips to New York. The city itself was big and exciting, but even more, she loved to visit her Aunt Eloise. Aunt Lou, as Nancy called her, was her father's younger sister, and more than once the schoolteacher had assisted her niece in solving a mystery. By noontime, Nancy was ringing the bell of her aunt's apartment. Eloise Drew greeted her with a warm hug and an exclamation of delight. "Nancy, darling, you're the answer to a big wish," cried her aunt. "Here I was with a long weekend on my hands and nothing to do, and now, presto, in you pop with that telltale gleam in your eyes. A gleam that says you're involved in another mystery, right?" "Right," her niece laughed. "And I hope you'll help me." While she and Aunt Lou prepared a light luncheon, Nancy told her story, ending with the episode about the questionable dividend payment. "What do you plan to do about it, Nancy?" her aunt inquired. "Go to the address on that envelope, Aunt Lou. I suspect Mrs. Channing's husband may be there, and if he's the one who sent those money orders, I'll notify the police." "I'll go with you," the schoolteacher announced. After she and her niece had finished luncheon, they started out. It didn't take long by subway for Nancy and her aunt to reach the rundown district of the address on the envelope. To their amazement, it proved to be a hotel. What? The place was small and shabby. A bored clerk looked up from the novel he was reading as the two approached his desk. "I'm looking for Mr. R.I. Channing," said Nancy. "Is he registered here?" "Channing?" mumbled the clerk. "No, we haven't anybody by that name." Nancy tried hard to conceal her disappointment. "Perhaps I was mistaken in the name," she said quickly. "But do you have a guest who works for the Forest Fur Company?" "No, don't think I ever heard of such a firm. Look, young lady, this is a residential hotel. We don't handle business and—" "Pardon me, did you mention the Forest Fur Company?" The speaker was an overdressed, red-haired woman in her early 40s. As Nancy turned to face her, the stranger gave the young detective a glittering, artificial smile. "I'm Miss Reynolds," she explained. "I live in this hotel, and I couldn't help but hear your question. I believe I know the very person you're looking for. I'm a stockholder in his company." Nancy's heart leaped. "At last we're getting somewhere," she thought. Aloud she said, "I'm Nancy Drew, this is my aunt. Would you mind telling me where to find him?" "Why, Mr. Sidney Boyd occupies the suite next to mine," went on the red-haired woman kindly. "Such a gentleman, Mr. Boyd, so considerate, and such a student of the theater. Why, do you know what he said of my performance in Wild Lilacs, Miss Drew? He said—" "I'm sure it was very complimentary, Miss Reynolds," Nancy cut in hastily, when she foresaw that the woman might ramble on indefinitely. "Do you mind telling me how you happened to purchase Forest Fur Company stock? Did Mr. Boyd sell it to you?" "Of course he did, but only after I coaxed him," admitted the actress, coyly rolling her eyes. "It isn't every day that a girl can buy into the mink fur business." The clerk had listened to this conversation wide-eyed. Now he waited until Miss Reynolds nodded a goodbye to the Drews and sauntered slowly toward the elevator. "Huh! So, Bunny Reynolds calls herself an actress, does she?" he snorted. "Why, she hasn't had a theater engagement in years." "What about your other guest, Mr. Sidney Boyd?" Nancy prompted. "Yes, what about him?" Aunt Lou challenged. "Listen, ladies, I'm the manager here as well as the clerk. We don't want any trouble on these premises." "Then I judge you don't want any trouble with the law either," Eloise Drew reminded him. "Suppose this Mr. Sidney Boyd is involved in a fake stock swindle." "A swindle?" the manager gulped. Why, I always suspected there was something phony about that fellow Boyd," the clerk stammered. "He's such a glib talker, such a man with the ladies." "What does he look like?" Nancy inquired. "Oh, the usual type." The clerk shrugged. "Small and slender, dark eyes, slick patent leather hair. Of course it's going to be slick hair. Villains usually have the coolest hairstyle." "Well, that settles one possibility," Nancy thought. "Sidney Boyd can't be Mrs. Channing's husband. He's a big, broad-shouldered man. But if Boyd sold fur stock to Mrs. Reynolds, he may have sold some to others in the hotel." Aloud she said, Would you mind if I question some of your staff about Mr. Boyd? The clerk hesitated. I don't know, Miss Drew. We have a small organization here. Everyone's pretty busy. It will take only a few minutes, Nancy pleaded. I want to talk to the bellhops and porters, and especially to the chambermaid on Mr. Boyd's floor. Very well, the man agreed. Step into my office, ladies. I'll send the bellhops first. The bellhops could tell Nancy nothing about Sidney Boyd, except that he tipped them generously and never seemed to work. The maids on 3 floors likewise could add nothing. It was only when Nancy interviewed Katie, the 4th floor maid, that the picture, so far as it concerned Mr. Sidney Boyd, began to clear. Katie did not want to talk at first, but Nancy's sympathetic attitude soon drew her out. Mr. Sidney Boyd was very particular, the maid explained. Always wanted his bed made just so, and extra towels in the bathroom. He got up late, and sometimes, while I was waiting to clean up, he chatted with me friendly-like. What did you chat about? Nancy asked. Oh, he talked about when he was a little boy in Canada, said Katie vaguely. He said his mother was French and that his pa was a fur trapper. Mr. Boyd knows a lot about furs, the maid rambled on. That's how I come to buy some of his fur stock. Forest Fur Company stock, Nancy said quickly. Yeah, I had a little money saved up, said Katie, twisting her hands nervously. Maybe I shouldn't have spent it, but Mr. Boyd felt sorry for me. He wanted to help me make more money. He mentioned big dividends. Have you had any yet? Nancy asked. No, but Mr. Boyd promised some money soon. Eloise Drew could restrain herself no longer. Why, the man's a contemptible rascal, she cried out indignantly. How can he rob hard-working people that way? Rob? Katie exclaimed, tears flooding her faded eyes. You're saying that Mr. Boyd took my money and cheated me? I think you'll get it back, Nancy soothed. We just want to find out. Katie had already leaped to her feet. With a hysterical sob, she flung open the office door and rushed from the room. Nancy's aunt was sorry she had spoken. Nevertheless, said Miss Drew, this sort of thing makes me heartsick. When I think of all the sorrow these thieves have caused, even jail seems too good for them. What do you propose to do next, Nancy? See Sidney Boyd, Nancy answered, and turn him over to the police. As she and her aunt approached the hotel desk, they heard the clang of the elevator door and the sharp click of high heels. An agitated voice called, Nancy Drew, wait! Bunny Reynolds ran across the lobby toward Nancy. The actress's eyes were wild and her face was chalk white. Katie told me everything, she panted. It's dreadful, just dreadful. Fake fur stock. Perhaps you'll get your money back, Nancy said. At least I'm trying. And the earrings, the actress interrupted. What about the diamond earrings I bought from Sidney Boyd? I suppose they're worthless too. Chapter 9. The TV tip-off. There was no quieting Bunny Reynolds. The woman was so agitated that Nancy and her aunt accompanied her back to her room on the 4th floor. It was cluttered with photographs of herself and other show people. The woman paced the floor. Her eyes blazed as she discussed Sidney Boyd. To think how I trusted that villain, she lamented, waving her arms dramatically. Oh! To think I bought bogus fur stock! I shall punish that unworthy soul! Cooling off a bit, she added, and then yesterday evening I let him sell me those no-good earrings. Earrings? The word sent Nancy's brain racing. Are you sure they're no good? Of course I am. If that fur stock is worthless, the diamonds must be too. Not necessarily, Nancy said. Where did he get the earrings? He said he inherited them from his mother, that he never intended to dispose of them until he met me. That only a woman with fire and artistic temperament should wear them. I must see them, Nancy thought. Then she said to the actress, I'm no jewel expert, Miss Reynolds, but would you mind letting me examine the earrings? Bunny opened the door of her clothes closet. She stood on a chair and groped far back on the shelf until she drew out a satin slipper. From it she took a rolled stocking, which she unwound to disclose a small velvet box. Here they are, she announced. I haven't even looked inside since Mr. Boyd told me to tuck them away safely. Nancy took the case from Bunny's hands and opened it. The case was empty. Bunny Reynolds let out a shriek. "He stole them!" she cried. "That horrible man took my money and then stole those diamond earrings!" "It looks that way," Nancy agreed, and her aunt nodded. "The diamonds must be real after all." The actress burst into tears. "I can't afford to lose all that money," she sobbed. "No, and neither can a lot of other people who have bought Forest Fur Company stock," Nancy said grimly. "Miss Reynolds, what did the earrings look like?" "They were beautiful, beautiful," the actress sighed. "Tiny platinum arrows tipped with the large sparkling diamonds at each end." "Platinum arrows?" Nancy suddenly felt sure of her hunch. She opened her handbag and removed the diamond brooch that belonged to Mrs. Packer. She held it toward the actress. "Were they anything like this?" Why, cried Bunny Reynolds. "This matches the earrings exactly. How did you get the pin?" "I'm afraid I have more bad news for you. The earrings probably are part of a set that belongs to a Mrs. Packer in River Heights. They were stolen from her a few days ago." "You mean by Sidney Boyd?" The actress gasped. "I don't believe so, but by someone who no doubt is an accomplice of his, a Mrs. R.I. Channing. Did he ever mention her?" "No, but just wait until I get hold of that double-crossing thief Boyd. I'll call the police." Suddenly she brightened. "I have a special friend on the force," she announced, reaching for the telephone. "Sergeant Rolfe." Nancy slipped over to her aunt and spoke softly in her ear. "I'm going to do some investigating, Aunt Lou, and see if I can find out where Mr. Boyd might be. Will you stay with Miss Reynolds until I get back?" Eloise Drew nodded. Nancy crossed the room in a few swift strides. As she flung open the door to the corridor, she collided with the crouching figure of Katie, who very plainly had been listening to the conversation. Oh, excuse me," the maid stammered. Nancy smiled. "Naturally you want to know what's going on, Katie." "Yes, ma'am, I certainly do," the maid admitted. "Will the police get that awful man, Miss Drew? Will they get him now that he's run away?" "Run away!" Nancy exclaimed. "Has Sidney Boyd left the hotel?" Katie pointed mutely to the open door of the room he had occupied. "His bed wasn't slept in last night, and all his things are gone." "Then we must notify the manager at once," said Nancy briskly. "I've already done that. It's one of the rules. Mr. Boyd checked out of the hotel late last night. The night clerk forgot to tell the manager." The young detective thought quickly. It was plain what had happened, she told herself. Boyd had sold the diamond earrings to Bunny Reynolds at a pretty price. Then he had stolen them from her. Bold as the man was, he couldn't risk staying in the hotel any longer after that. The swindler's room was meticulously neat. Nancy went inside and examined it for a clue to his whereabouts, but with no success. There was not a scrap of paper in the wastebasket. Nothing of any kind in the dresser drawers nor the desk to give her a clue. Boyd was just as clever as his partner in crime, Mrs. Channing. I think Boyd might be better than Mrs. Channing. Because seriously, Mrs. Channing was the one that accidentally left the tag from the coat, or the mink scarf, remember? While the young detective stood there, the sound of a booming voice in Bunny Reynolds' room announced the arrival of Police Sergeant Rolfe. Nancy hurried back to meet him. The sergeant was a big man with ham-like hands. Brrr! After hearing Bunny's story, he demanded to see the brooch which matched the stolen earrings. "If you don't mind, I'll take these down to the police laboratory and have some photographs made," he told Nancy after examining it. "Then we can give the pictures to our men and have them watch out for those earrings. Sidney Boyd may try to sell them again." "Isn't he wonderful?" Bunny cooed, fluttering her eyelashes at the policeman. "You'll get back my money from me right away, won't you, Sergeant? You'll capture that dastardly Sidney Boyd?" The sergeant looked embarrassed. "Now, Miss Reynolds, give me time. Maybe I can have a report for you by tomorrow afternoon." Bunny rolled her green eyes at him. "Oh dear, must you take that long?" She pouted. "Can't you get some action by tonight?" "Oh, what a doll!" Sergeant Rolfe fidgeted uncomfortably. "Well, the fact is a lot of the men will be pretty busy tonight, Miss Reynolds," he stammered. "It's the policeman's ball." "Oh, I see," the actress said in a small, hurt voice. You'll be dancing and having a good time while I... Bunny's lip quivered as she dabbed pathetically at her eyes. My God, she's good. The sergeant observed her distress and took a deep breath. Look, I've got no special lady friend, he blurted. Suppose you come along with me? Bunny Reynolds dropped her tragic air like a cloak. My sergeant, what a delightful idea, she beamed. I'd love to go. Nancy beckoned to her aunt. I think this is our cue for an exit, she chuckled. If the sergeant will just write out a receipt for this brooch, we'll be on our way. Yes, ma'am, of course, said the policeman. Removing a memo pad from his pocket, he wrote a receipt. Here you are, Miss Drew. Nancy slipped it into her purse. She and her aunts left the hotel, turning up their collars against the cold wind. You certainly accomplished a lot, my dear, Eloise Drew praised her niece. And now for the rest of your visits, please let's relax and do no more sleuthing. Psst, you wish. Nancy grinned. At least not until we get a report from Sergeant Rolfe. I'm having a special treat for dinner tonight. We'll stop at the market and pick up the order. Her promise of a treat was more than fulfilled. The school teacher had been so intrigued by her niece's interest in a fur mystery that she had chosen a trapper's dinner. When the table was finally set with the lighted candles and gleaming silver, Nancy heaved an ecstatic sigh. How delicious everything looks, she exclaimed. Venison and wild rice, and my favorite, currant jelly. What the heck is currant jelly? Why, Aunt Lou, this is a real North Country feast. It's hard to realize we're in New York. Conversation soon turned to Sidney Boyd and Bunny Reynolds, then to Mrs. Channing and the bogus fur company stock. What was it you said about Dunstan Lake? Aunt Lou asked. That it was the location of the Forest Fur Company? So it says on the stock certificates, her niece answered. But nobody, not even the United States Post Office, ever heard of such a place. Maybe it's not a town at all, Aunt Lou frowned. It might refer to a resort without a post office. You know, Nancy, I've heard that name somewhere, but I can't remember when or how. If only I had your sleuthing ability, I'd know in a minute. Nevertheless, she added with a laugh, I hope you'll always ask me to help you in your mysteries. I do call on you whenever I can, Nancy insisted. Remember how you gave me a hand in the clue in the old album? And then there was the clue of the leaning chimney. You were simply super in that. And that time you took my dog Togo up to the Adirondacks with you when you closed your summer home. Togo! Aunt Lou interrupted. I remember now. Someone came to the cottage while we were there. I believe he was a trapper. He was looking for a mink branch and a Dunstan lake. But there is no lake by that name around there, Nancy. Perhaps it's the name of the owner of the mink branch. Oh, that's a wonderful clue, Nancy cried excitedly. Please don't follow it tonight, her aunt teased, or we'll be late for the theater. Ooh, theater. The theater. Nancy thoroughly enjoyed the mystery drama Miss Drew had chosen. Sunday proved to be another interesting day, and finally, when evening came, they were ready to enjoy a television symphony concert. Together, the golden-haired girl and the aunt she so closely resembled seated themselves before the television set in the living room. The musical program was modern, and the piano soloist superb. When the show was over, an old film depicting a skating carnival was flashed on the screen. There was a large picture of the skating queen, then one by one close-ups of her ladies in waiting. Suddenly, Nancy leaped toward the television screen. Aunt Lou, look! She pointed excitedly. That tall attendant in the satin robe. She's very attractive, Miss Drew commented. I'd say she's the most attractive of all the skaters, certainly much more striking than the queen. I know her, Nancy cried. Friend of yours? No, Aunt Lou, she's the woman I'm trying to find. That's Mrs. R.I. Channing. Oh, my. And that is where we end. No! I want to read more! Actually, I could read a little more of chapter 10 for the next video. That would be great for me, huh? Next chapter 10, The Old Trapper. I think I'm actually just going to go ahead and stop it there, guys. That was super intense. I mean, I got to read more, that was getting really, oh my gosh, I want to read more. So, what did you think of that? I mean, there were so many twists and turns already. There are already so many twists and turns already. And we're only on we just finished chapter 9. There's like 25 chapters in this book, guys. And that's another reason why I'm reading 2 chapters for the rest of the playlist. It's because there are 25 chapters. Very big book. See? That's how thick the book is. There's like over 200 pages a book. Per book. Up until, I think, the 90s is where all the books are, like, over 200 pages. Up until the 90s, it decreased. And I think they decreased the amount of chapters by, like, 5? Maybe 10? I don't know. I actually do have a couple of the modern books, and especially the, newer ones. Well, not the newer ones. More like the second latest new ones, I should say. Detective Girl... Nancy Drew, Girl Detective Mysteries. It's the yellow binding paperbacks, I should say. The only hardbacks I have of Nancy Drew are up until the 50s, I think. And I wish I had more hardbacks of the Nancy Drew, because I super love the older versions. They're so original and so much more interesting. I actually do know for a fact that the more they reset the series, the more they try to modernize and revise, and they just try to retell it differently and more modern and stuff like that. And it's just really disappointing because the original books, even though they have like grammar and punctual flaws, they're still really good. They have originality to them. And you get to reminisce of what it was like back in that time, even if you didn't live in that time. Because, like, one of the Nancy Drew Girl Detective Mysteries that I have, the yellow paperbacks, one of them is called, I always forget the wording of the title, because it's kind of confusing when you're trying to remember it. I think it's like, Bad Times, Big Crimes. And Nancy Drew falls asleep at a conference, and in her dream, she's back in time, like in the 30s of the Great Depression when Hoover was president and all that jazz. She actually has to solve a mystery in that time. And it's insane because it's just not what you expect. Like, Nancy has her memory from the modern times and she's in the 30s. She's like, wait, what's going on? Wait, I thought I had a $20 bill. Now I only have 5? Oh, snappy doodles. It's really interesting, and I love I love the twists and turns in that book. It's definitely what I would do. Except for the dream part. I wouldn't put Nancy in a dream. Even though I did do that in one of my original books, the ones that I've written. I did do that for one of my books, the one I'm trying to publish, actually. I've learned, though, that it's a bad idea to use dreams as an escape or as an exit. That is bad juju, bad move on trying to get sales. Because, guys, if you're familiar with Inception, great film, bad production, bad value. I don't even know what the score was on Rotten Tomatoes. Oh my gosh. Anyways, guys, I'm having too much fun with this. I'm sure you didn't want to hear anything about it, but that's me. I'm too honest and I love talking about Nancy Drew. Oh, I almost forgot. One thing I do want to mention before I say goodbye, my hopefuls. One of my friends on Facebook, well, more like a mutual friend. I don't really know her, but she's trying to invite authors, well-known authors, I guess. I mean, I don't recognize any of the names, but I think 1 or 2. She says that she is having a conference call with Stephen King's agent in January. I'm like, what? And there's one other author that I was familiar with, but I don't remember what it was. And she's like, alright guys, besides these that I've listed down here below, who else, what other author would you like to see here in town? I'm like, well, I've already got Tamora Pierce's autograph on my books. let's see, who else do I want? Elizabeth Cody Kimmel, Ron Roy, Mary Downing Hahn, and, Jennifer St. Giles. Yes. Oh my gosh. If I could get Jennifer St. Giles to sign my books, it would be awesome. Guys, you have no idea how much I love her books. I mean, I've only read one of her series that she's written, and the series I think is called not Dark Materials, the Kildoran series. Killdraren? I think that's how it's spelled. It's a great series. Mind you, it is not suitable for kids or young adults. Actually, it could be for young adults only if you're sexually active. Sorry. But it's a great series. Definitely gotta check it out. Because I think the only reason I'm saying it's beautiful is because I'm into the mystery, I'm into ghosts, I am into psychic powers, I am into exploring the dark world. Oh, and the last book in the series uses Jack the Ripper. Yes, I said it. Anyways, guys, I'm talking way too much. I'm having too much fun with this. Okay, so if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button that's down below. And if you're not getting any notifications on the beautiful videos that I make, even though they're amateur at best, go ahead and hit that red subscribe button as well as the bell icon right next to it. That'll get you notified of all the videos that I upload, which are on Fridays, 5 or 5:30 p.m. Central, or Saturdays whenever I am available to get it up. So I hope you all have a great morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. I am the Esperanza 243, signing out. Bye-bye! Dude.